New York Federal Courtroom, June 9, 2025. No one in the courtroom, neither lawyers, reporters, nor activists closely following the case of Sean P. Diddy Combs, could have predicted the name called out at exactly 9:17 that morning. The next witness, Keanu Charles Reeves. It was as if the room had been drained of oxygen. A few whispers broke the silence. No way. Is he really here, Keanu? In the Diddy case. Then the door opened. A man stepped in, wearing a black suit, no tie, long hair neatly tied at the nape, walking slowly as if stepping onto a movie set. But there were no camera lights here. No rolls. No director yelling, "Cut." Keanu Reeves entered the courtroom with the quiet demeanor of someone deeply familiar with solitude, but today he could not stay silent. Keanu Reeves had never been directly linked to hip-hop, nor was he the type to appear at lavish parties or get swept up in Hollywood's scandal mills. Over more than 3 decades of his career, he'd been known for his almost unreal persona, humble rides the subway, no scandals, always kind. But this time, his name appeared on the witness list summoned by the prosecution, and the reason had nothing to do with verifying records or testifying about professional conduct. He was called in for a strange, almost surreal experience he had in 2016. "I don't want to be here," Keanu began before the jury, "but I believe I have a duty to tell the truth, even if it harms someone's image or shatters something I once couldn't believe was real." The story he then told might have sounded like a rejected movie script, but in the solemn air of the courtroom under oath, it became the epicenter of a barrage of questions about strangeness, power, and the moral boundaries of the entertainment industry, from gala to a strange party. According to Keanu, the event started with a polite invitation from a large charity called Hope for Harlem, organizing a gala to connect Hollywood artists with African-American social activists. "I came because I wanted to support," he said. "I didn't know Diddy was co-hosting." That night, Keanu was invited to a private residence not listed on any map north of Beverly Hills. An SUV picked me up. The driver said nothing, he recounted. "When we arrived, I was taken through 3 layers of screening, a camera checkpoint, a phone scan, and finally an NDA. An NDA non-disclosure agreement is not unusual in entertainment circles, but what made Keanu start feeling something was off was that everyone around him seemed suspiciously silent. I saw familiar faces, a TV star, a director I'd worked with on Netflix, a few fashion industry people, but no one spoke. After about 40 minutes of wine and mingling, no DJ, no music, just dim lights and a faint Eastern scent, a door opened. And Diddy entered. He wore a white robe, barefoot. Very calm. Unlike any public version of him I'd ever seen. According to Keanu, their conversation was brief but haunting. He came close. No pleasantries. Just looked at me and said, "Do you believe in personal liberation, Keanu?" I thought he was being philosophical. I nodded. Then he continued, "I bathed this morning in rosewater and essential oils. I believe that if someone bathes again in the water I've used, they'll be cleansed of negative energy." I didn't understand. I asked, "What are you asking me to do?" And he said, "Bathe in my water. It's still warm." The courtroom fell silent. No one laughed. No one asked for clarification. The prosecutor left the statement hanging in the air, letting the absurdity and the imbalance of power speak for itself. "Did you do it?" the lawyer asked. Keanu shook his head. I said no. Politely, but he just smiled and said, "You're different, Keanu. Do you really think you're not part of the game?" That phrase, "the game," was repeated 3 times during the questioning by prosecutor Emily Johnson. "What do you think he meant by that?" Keanu was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I don't think he was just talking about the party. I think he meant the entire entertainment industry, where power doesn't come from talent, but from who's willing to bow, who's willing to do things no one dares to talk about." He continued, "When I left, I didn't feel scared. But a few weeks later, I lost a film deal. No reason given. The director was a friend, but never replied to emails again. I didn't dare connect that to the other night, but it made me think if I were weaker, I might have said yes that night. The vanishing contract and the phones that went silent. Just 2 weeks after the party, Keanu received a call from his representative at CAA Creative Artists Agency, one of the largest talent agencies in Hollywood. "There's a problem with the Catalyst project," the rep said. It was a sci-fi film in which Keanu had already been cast in the lead role with a projected $60 million budget co-produced by a studio that had just received investment from Diddy's entertainment company. There was no specific reason, no follow-up email. The director, once a close friend from the Lake House days, suddenly stopped responding. After 3 days of silence, he sent just one text. "I'm sorry. Things are out of my hands." 3 other projects then in negotiation also went into limbo, on hold, reevaluating strategy pending budget confirmation. "No one said outright it was because of me," Keanu recalled. But the coincidence was too clear, and I started to feel a chill down my spine. Rumors, glances, and isolation in the City of Lights. From an irreplaceable name in action films, Keanu suddenly became someone producers weren't so sure they should cast. Whispered rumors spread, but no one said anything directly. A Vanity Fair reporter murmured to Keanu's manager, "Did something happen? They're saying he's hard to work with now. Cold, not as soft as before." Keanu wasn't the type to refute gossip, nor was he the kind to hold press conferences. He chose silence, but silence didn't protect him from the feeling of being pushed out. I went to a small party in Venice. Normally, I'd be seated at the center. That night, I stood in the doorway for nearly 15 minutes. No one said a word. No one looked at me, just glances, like I'd done something wrong. An actor who worked with Keanu on John Wick, speaking anonymously, told reporters he became extremely reserved after 2016. Not the same warm Keanu. He didn't lose his kindness, but he started losing his trust. A midnight phone call and a chilling laugh. In September 2016, Keanu received a phone call at 2 a.m. The caller didn't identify himself, but the voice as Keanu described was unmistakable. I heard the voice say, "You good, Keanu? Cold shower treating you okay? I heard my water's good for the skin." He said his heart clenched. Not out of fear, but because he realized this was no longer a joke. He wanted me to know he remembered. And he hadn't forgotten I said no. Keanu didn't report it to the police, didn't save the number, didn't file a complaint. "I've lived through deep loss. I've buried a girlfriend. I've lost an unborn child." But I'd never felt myself looked at like I wasn't human anymore, just a variable in someone's domination game. The Kyoto retreat and the choice of silence. At the end of 2016, Keanu left Los Angeles. He went to Kyoto, living in a Zen temple near Arashiyama. "I wasn't running away," he said. "I just wanted to find the part of me that felt like it was drifting." There, he didn't use a phone, didn't act, didn't appear publicly for 5 months. He meditated, read, kept a journal, and thought about the bathtub. Not because I was obsessed, but because I couldn't understand why a person would consider that bizarre behavior a ritual, and why if I refused, I'd be punished. When he returned, Keanu chose small projects. He declined all offers connected to studios affiliated with Combs Enterprises. He said nothing publicly until the June 2025 trial. Why did Keanu speak out? When asked why he was speaking now, Keanu simply said, "Because I saw women standing up, speaking about things even heavier. If they had the courage, I have no reason to stay silent." He didn't call himself a victim, didn't use the word survivor. He only said that he saw a part of the machine, and sometimes just a part is enough to understand what the whole thing is. That statement silenced the entire courtroom. Because sometimes truth doesn't come from the grand gestures, but from something as simple as a bathtub and a shake of the head. A model speaks. I stepped into that bathtub, and I still smell it. One woman appearing under the name Jane Doe, 7, had once worked as a model for a fashion brand backed by Combs. She testified that she was invited to a villa in Turks and Caicos in 2018 under the pretense of relaxing, connecting, and discussing long-term opportunities. I was taken to a small room with a marble bathtub, candlelight, wordless music. Then a woman she seemed like an assistant told me, "This is a cleansing ritual, just a few minutes." She stepped into the tub. The water was still warm. There were essential oils. But within seconds, something felt wrong. The smell of a body, alcohol, cigarettes. It wasn't fresh water. She didn't say anything then. She tried to appear calm, but in her mind she panicked. Later, when she saw someone else also in the same tub, she quietly left. But she didn't leave the island immediately. No one could without a flight schedule arranged by the company. The choreographer, he said water is power. Another witness who did not request anonymity was Kyle L., a choreographer for a campaign promoting the unforgivable fragrance by Diddy. He described a creative meeting in Miami in 2015 where Diddy led a group of 6 men. He said, "Power isn't about who speaks the loudest. It's about who can make others do something absurd without being questioned." During the meeting, Diddy left the room, then returned holding a cup of water. He said, "I just took a bath. This is that water. I want everyone to drink a sip, not for hygiene, but for symbolism. If we can't unify through the irrational, we'll always be controlled by others." 3 men drank. Kyle didn't. A week later, he was replaced. No notice was given. The ritual of submission. In her opening argument, prosecutor Emily Johnson introduced a psychological concept, ritual humiliation. In many closed systems of power, especially cults or gangs, there are rituals not intended for spirituality or morality, but for establishing a master-servant dynamic between the leader and everyone else. She pointed out the eerie similarities between testimonies, candles, bathtubs, silence, strange requests, and consequences following refusal. Those who refused were punished by losing contracts, missing opportunities, or being socially isolated. Those who complied were kept, but never treated as equals. Submission is tracked by scent, not signature. A former administrative assistant at Combs Enterprises, under the pseudonym Laura D., testified that she had once been assigned to prepare rituals for VIP guests. These preparations included mixing essential oils into the water lavender sandalwood, checking bathwater temperature, ensuring that the next guest had no idea they were reusing someone else's bathwater, lighting candles, and playing energy harmony frequency music. When asked why she didn't refuse, Lara simply said, "It was a request from higher up. I was just an employee, but I knew when someone stepped out of that tub, they weren't from the outside world anymore. They had entered the game." A bathtub that never empties prosecutors introduced photographs of a bathroom inside the Holmby Hills estate, reportedly one of the most used locations for these secret gatherings. It featured a specially designed bathtub, a recirculating filtration system, continuous heat maintenance for 12 hours, and automatic scent neutralization, but no standard drainage system. The technical file stated, "Water reused according to ritual cycle." Engineers who installed the system originally thought it was for a luxury pet spa until they were instructed, "Don't drain it too fast. Preserve the essence." When asked what essence meant, they never received an answer. Why water? A seemingly trivial question became the heart of the prosecution's rebuttal. Why would a man like Diddy, wealthy and powerful, be obsessed with reusing bathwater? A cultural analyst brought in as an expert. Witness explained, "Water is an ancient symbol of purification, rebirth, and control. In cults, bathing rituals are a means of testing submission because they touch the boundaries of body and consciousness. To make someone bathe in your used water is to declare, 'My body is the center of your universe.' And for Diddy, that center wasn't just music, it was absolute submission. Keanu, the only one who said no. When asked, "Do you think you were the only one asked to do this?" Keanu shook his head. No. I think a lot of people have been in that tub, but I had the advantage of not needing him. I wasn't seeking approval. I didn't need his empire. And I wasn't afraid of being erased from a system I was never part of. That was the key difference between Keanu and many others young people full of ambition chasing dreams in the harsh world of pop culture. They couldn't say no, because they knew if they didn't bathe, they'd never be invited to the next room. A bathtub, a story, a system. And thus, from what seemed like a bizarre, even humorous anecdote told by Keanu Reeves, the courtroom began to see this was not about one eccentric man. This was a pattern, a ritual designed to erase identity, violate personal boundaries, and establish one man's absolute power, not with fists, not with threats, but with water, something clear, seemingly pure, leaving no trace. On the surface, Hollywood and hip-hop seem like opposites. On one side, the capital of film, where stars are crafted into global icons backed by billion-dollar studios and glorified at the Oscars. On the other, the world of street music, raw, defiant, colored by race and survival stories from the inner city marked by hustle and self-made glory. But behind the lights and glamour, something else has been happening. A convergence riddled with schemes where fame becomes bargaining capital and silence at times is the most valuable currency. One handshake, two empires. Sean P. Diddy Combs had long transcended music. He wasn't just a rapper, producer, or founder of Bad Boy Records. He was a mogul with deep investments in fashion, Sean John Liquor Ciroc Media, Revolt TV, and cross-platform entertainment. For nearly 2 decades, he embodied the crossover between hip-hop and Hollywood, between gangsta grit and seven-figure suits. From 2010 onward, Diddy began appearing more frequently in film circles, quietly funding the can, backstage serving on advisory boards for indie studios, and most notably, investing in financial funds backing independent films. One notable deal came in 2015 when Diddy put $12 million into a film studio affiliated with CAA Creative Artists Agency, Keanu Reeves' own agency. According to a leaked SEC document, Diddy became a strategic stakeholder with veto power over content deemed damaging to his brand or associated cultural partners. In other words, Diddy wasn't just an artist. He was a gatekeeper with the power to influence who got to play and who got cut. Nights that were never filmed. Lance Rollins, a former investigative reporter at Variety, once wrote a piece that was never published titled, "The Quiet Rooms Where the Deals and People Get Washed." In the piece later leaked anonymously on Reddit, Rollins described silent rooms at exclusive events like the Met Gala Vanity Fair Oscars party or the LACMA after party. According to numerous sources, these rooms were the swap zones between Hollywood and the music industry, where a director might pitch a project to a rapper and a singer might land a movie role through nothing more than a promise of guaranteed returns. Diddy, according to 3 anonymous sources, was always in the middle. Not quite the boss, not just the artist, but the connector. He could call a director just because an actor refused to bathe a former executive at a major studio recalled, and that director would understand you might lose half your budget if you don't restructure your cast. The bank accounts that kept secrets. During the trial, prosecutors presented a series of financial transactions between 2015 and 2021, over $17 million transferred from Combs Enterprises to a Delaware-based fund called Aurora Influence Holdings, with operational offices in Beverly Hills. The fund, according to IRS investigations, did not invest in stocks or fixed assets. Instead, it engaged in strategic collaborations with indie filmmakers to support media relations PR and casting. The contracts were vague, only containing ambiguous phrases like reputation alignment services. Yet an analysis showed this artists who had appeared at Diddy's private events or participated in intimate rituals, as one assistant phrased it, later received roles in films backed by Aurora. Meanwhile, those who had caused discomfort like Keanu Reeves were quietly removed from production schedules with no clear explanation. Silence has a price and a structure. When Keanu withdrew from major public events in Los Angeles in late 2016, a flurry of articles painted him as the recluse, the artist retreating from life, a somber soul worn down by grief. Not one piece mentioned the Diddy Villa incident. Not one questioned why several of his film deals evaporated within a single summer. A senior editor at The Hollywood Reporter remarked, "No one wanted to go after Diddy. He wasn't just a celebrity, he was a system. Going after him meant going after too many connections, budgets, and the club of silent kingmakers." In a leaked internal email from the law firm WG&P, which represented 12 clients tied to Diddy, one attorney wrote, "Reeves has no reason to stir the pot. He doesn't need money. If he speaks, he'll just make himself a target." A network, like a matrix. Perhaps the scariest part wasn't the strange rituals themselves, but how the entire ecosystem legitimized them. Through contracts, NDAs, backroom deals, and quiet trades between layers of power. Diddy wasn't the only one in control. He was the one allowed to control thanks to financial relationships, cultural influence, and the ability to give or take away someone's shot. And Hollywood, with all its talk of freedom, diversity, and democracy, was still a stage where the real director never showed his face. Keanu was just one character in that network. But his story, plain, unadorned, unsentimental, accidentally revealed the hidden structure where hip-hop was more than music and Hollywood more than art. It was a world where silence used strategically could open the door to power. The public eruption, a bath and a signal. When Keanu Reeves recounted how Diddy invited him to bathe in his used water, most observers at first treated it as an odd, deeply personal anecdote. But by day 29 of the trial, as more witnesses stepped forward, the narrative shifted from an isolated incident to an alarming pattern. A ritual form, both symbolic and physical, was being repeated in private spaces where power wasn't asserted through weapons or threats, but through the silence of those who witnessed. Keanu was the first to speak, but he wasn't the only one who experienced it. An anonymous model, "I stepped into that bathtub, and I still smell it." A woman known as Jane Doe, 7. Once a model for a fashion brand sponsored by Combs, testified that she was flown to a villa in Turks and Caicos in 2018 under the pretense of a relaxing networking career opportunity. "I was taken to a small marble bathroom, candlelight, instrumental music. Then a woman, maybe an assistant, said, 'This is an energy purification ritual, just a few minutes.' She entered the tub. The water was still warm, scented with oils, but instantly she felt something was wrong. Body odor, alcohol, cigarette smoke. It wasn't clean water. She didn't react, tried to stay composed. But in her mind, she panicked. Later, seeing someone else enter the same tub, she slipped away quietly. But she couldn't leave the island until a company-arranged flight was scheduled. The choreographer, he said, "Water is power," Kyle L. A choreographer for the Unforgivable Cologne campaign testified about a creative session in 2015 led by Diddy in Miami involving 6 men. He said, "Power doesn't come from volume. It comes from who can get others to do something absurd and not be questioned." Then Diddy walked out, returned with a glass of water. "I just bathed. This is that water. I want you all to take a sip, not for hygiene, but for symbolism. If we can't fuse through the irrational, we'll always be someone else's tool." 3 drank. Kyle didn't. He was replaced a week later, no explanation. The assistant submission has a scent. A former assistant at Combs Enterprises under the pseudonym Laura D. testified about VIP ritual preparations that involved mixing essential oils, lavender, sandalwood into reused water, adjusting bath temperature, ensuring the next guest never realized the water was reused, lighting candles, playing frequency harmonization music. When asked why she didn't speak up, Lara said, "I was a salaried employee. Orders came from the top, but I knew once someone left that tub, they weren't an outsider anymore. They'd entered the game. A bathtub that never drained. The prosecution revealed photos of a bathtub at the Holmby Hills estate with a circulating filtration system. 12-hour heat retention. Scent neutralizing function. No standard drainage. Technical specs noted cyclical water reuse for ceremonial purpose. Installers originally believed it was for luxury pet therapy until they were told don't drain it quickly. Preserve the essence. When they asked what essence meant, they got no answer. Why water? A cultural analyst asked, why would someone like Diddy, a billionaire, obsess over reused bathwater? His answer: water symbolizes purification, rebirth, and control. In secretive hierarchies, bathing rituals test submission because they cross bodily and psychological boundaries. Forcing someone to enter your bathwater says, my body is your spiritual center. It's not about hygiene, it's about dominion. And Keanu said no. When asked, do you think you were the only one, Keanu replied, no. I think many have stepped into that tub. But I had the advantage I didn't need him. I wasn't chasing validation. I wasn't part of his empire. And I wasn't afraid to be erased from a system I never belonged to. That's what set Keanu apart from so many others. Young, eager, hungry, climbing through a brutal entertainment system. They couldn't afford to say no, because they knew if they didn't bathe, they'd never be invited into the next room. The internet reacts from mockery to reckoning. Within 6 hours of Keanu's testimony, hashtags Jack's Bathgate and I Stand With Keanu trended worldwide on X, formerly Twitter. The first wave was mockery, Keanu's still living in the Matrix. Diddy just cast himself as the villain in John Wick 5. Hollywood bathes in holy water. Hip-hop uses Diddy's. But then the tone shifted. A psychologist wrote, the weight of Keanu's testimony lies not in the act, but in the context. In a place where saying no is not just defiance, it's a political act. A former PR agent posted, I've seen requests like this before. And I stayed silent. Keanu didn't speak for laughs. He spoke for the voiceless. More witnesses step forward. I went into that tub. The first new witness was Malik Carter, a young rapper who signed a short-term deal with Bad Boy Records in 2017. On the Code Switch podcast, he described the party thrown to welcome him after his first mixtape drop. They said it was tradition, a ritual to synchronize energy. I was 20, fresh out of Queens. I saw famous people there. Everyone acted normal. Some even joked. Malik said he was guided into a large bathroom, dim candlelight, pre-filled water, lavender scent water, slightly cloudy. I thought it was just mineral salts. But something felt wrong, I knew. But I still stepped in, because I didn't want to lose the deal. When asked why he spoke now, Malik said, if Keanu had the guts to say it, I've got no reason to stay quiet. I don't want anyone else stepping into that tub thinking it's normal. A stylist's account. I didn't get in the tub, but I was told to prepare it, Sasha L. A fashion stylist who worked on Diddy's photo campaigns in 2019 recalled being given a special assignment after a shoot to prepare a spiritual cleansing room for a VIP guest. They gave me a list what candles to light, what music to play, what temperature the water should be, what scent to use. I thought it was a spa setup, until I saw an assistant pour a red oil into the water and whisper, this is the water the host already bathed in. She didn't ask questions, but months later her contract was terminated, no reason given. Maybe I looked too long, she said. Jane Doe X. I was invited to a water-based soul cleansing. An anonymous witness dubbed Jane Doe X sent a statement to 60 Minutes describing a text she once received from a representative of Diddy inviting her to a private inner purification ceremony. The message read, Mr. Combs believes water connects the soul. This is not sexual, it is ritual. She declined. The message disappeared within 3 hours, no trace left. I didn't say anything. I thought it was a mistake. Now I know I wasn't mistaken. The internal note matching stories. Matching Sense prosecutor Emily Johnson convened a closed-door meeting with these new witnesses. In a leaked internal memo, she noted 7 witnesses described golden candlelight, sandalwood oils, and Bose speakers playing healing tones. 5 were instructed not to ask questions. 3 confirmed they were monitored in the bathroom via mirror or door slit. 2 had their phones taken afterward. 1 said, "I thought it was an elite initiation ceremony." She concluded, "Each story is different, but the overlapping elements are too specific to be coincidental. Either they've coordinated an elaborate lie, or they're telling the truth." The language of a cult. These testimonies weren't isolated. They were threaded together by a shared internal vocabulary. Water alignment, energy sinking, purification chamber. These weren't common in performance contracts, but they appeared in 12 internal emails recovered from Combs Enterprises sent to assistant stylists and tour managers. A former IT employee told Vice. They spoke in cult code. No one said bathtub. They said energy transfer station. No one said used water. They said soul water. Keanu wasn't the only one. He was just the first to be heard. As these stories reached the press, it became clear Keanu Reeves wasn't the only witness. And perhaps not even the first to experience the ritual. He was simply the first one the public would believe. What started as a bizarre anecdote had evolved into a cascade of testimony, not just accusing one man, but exposing a system that used ritual as a mechanism for domination, submission, and symbolic control. The sociologist, the bathtub, became a measure of obedience. A cultural sociologist put it bluntly, this was a structure of coercion, legitimized by symbols, where the bathtub stopped being a place to cleanse and started being a test of loyalty. From a seemingly odd invitation, "Bathe in my water," the case of Sean P. Diddy Combs was now seen through a far broader lens. Not just a personal transgression, but a power structure maintained through ritual symbolism and strategic silence. Psychological experts weigh in rituals of control. Dr. Dawn Hughes, a forensic psychologist who had testified in major harassment trials, stated, "Rituals don't need to be religious. In relationships with power imbalances, especially in creative industries, they're often used to shape submission." The demand to step into used bathwater wasn't just eccentric. It carried a message: I am the center. My body is purifying. Whoever touches it literally enters my world of control. When a celebrity makes such a request, especially in a sacred setting like a bathroom with candlelight scents music, they aren't just being weird. They are staging a psychological theater, said Dr. Hughes. The symbolism of water from myth to manipulation. According to Professor Jonathan Keel, a psychoanalyst from NYU specializing in symbolic behavior, water has always symbolized cleansing, rebirth, spiritual power. In initiation rites, the first step is often a washing away of one's previous identity to be reborn into something new. But in Diddy's case, Keel emphasized the water didn't come from a sacred source like nature or a temple. It came from his own body. This is a reversal of ritual leadership. The guide is no longer a vessel of divine power. He becomes the divine. The implication, I am the ritual. I am the God. And in this system, the God doesn't need your belief, only your obedience. Sociological analysis rebuilding a caste system. Professor Chloe Ramirez of UCLA, an expert on power structures in entertainment culture, explained. When Diddy orchestrated these rituals with custom vocabulary, lighting, even coded instructions, he wasn't just offering an experience, he was rebuilding a caste system. Those invited into the ritual were deemed promising, ready to be tested. Those who declined were marked quietly erased from the network. Those who obeyed were retained, but always in the position of the tamed. This is the classic control formula. Isolate, divide, reward, or punish, not through law, but through emotional leverage, Ramirez said. And that's why when Keanu said no, he became an exception and a threat. Silence as currency, the role of media. According to sociologist Maya Stevens from the University of Chicago, one reason these manipulative rituals survive so long is media complicity. We've grown so used to celebrity eccentricities that we no longer treat the abnormal with suspicion, we treat it with curiosity. Had the Keanu Diddy bathtub story come out in 2005, it likely would have been used as a punchline on late-night comedy shows. That's why the first reaction from social media was mockery, she noted. But once details aligned, people realized this isn't a meme. It's a system, a former HR director. It's a loyalty test. An anonymous former HR executive at a major entertainment company that once partnered with Combs Enterprises said, "There's a quiet test in the industry. Who says yes every time? Who says no? And who says yes but stays silent afterward? Those who quietly comply are kept on. Those who politely refuse are remembered and slowly excluded." It's not about talent. It's about personality profiling, who will bend to abnormality for the sake of power. And people like Keanu, those who stay silent for years then finally speak, are the kind of disruption the system cannot tolerate. The inversion of icons. In popular culture, Keanu Reeves represents the last good guy of Hollywood. Diddy, on the other hand, represents limitless power play. But this story flipped those roles publicly. The too kind one became inconvenient because he broke the spell. The too powerful one was exposed as depending on ritual to maintain the illusion of dominance. Just saying no to a bath, Ramirez said, shattered a structure. Because water, seemingly pure, was now revealed as the medium of manipulation. Not because it was dirty, but because it was weaponized by someone who believed that everything that passed through him should also pass through others. The interview heard around the world weeks. After his historic testimony, Keanu Reeves appeared in a rare interview with Anderson Cooper on the special 60 Minutes Breaking Silence. No polished lighting, no studio glamour, just a humble wooden room in Kyoto, the same place where Keanu had once lived in silence in 2017, and a man trying to tell the truth. He began with a simple line. "The truth doesn't always smell clean. Sometimes it smells like chlorine." The phrase, both strange and profound, became the headline of what would be one of the most quietly powerful cultural essays in recent memory. Chlorine. A metaphor for modern rituals. Chlorine, a chemical used to disinfect water, took on symbolic weight in Keanu's words. The bathtub, long a symbol of healing and cleansing, had been repurposed, tainted by power, and repackaged as spiritual. Keanu explained, "Not everything that smells clean is actually clean, and not everything lit by candles is about healing." He didn't call Diddy a monster. He didn't scream for justice. He simply told his story, then let it settle like a single drop of water sizzling on hot iron, enough to evaporate, but also enough to leave a stain. A mirror for a morally anxious society. Keanu's story didn't just shake the courtroom. It shook the public because it forced a cultural reckoning with boundaries that had long been blurred by fame. Millions laughed, then hesitated. Mocked, then fell quiet. Writer Roxane Gay put it plainly. "We reacted to that story like we would to a strange bathtub in a stranger's house. We looked at it, sniffed, felt uneasy, but stepped in anyway, afraid of missing an opportunity." One comment, liked over 100,000 times, read, "I used to think Keanu was a good man. Now I know he's a brave one." The image he had to break to be heard. A film critic observed Keanu spent 30 years building a perfect image, and in the moment he shared how he declined a bathtub, he shattered that image. To prove he's a real human being. His reputation no longer shielded him. It became something he had to get past in order to be believed. And when he said, "I'm not a hero, I'm just a man who walked into a room, saw something off, and walked out," it wasn't a declaration. It was a reminder that the real choice begins not when you have power, but when you dare to lose it. Diddy disappears into silence. Since his video, The Truth, Sean Combs had made no further public appearances. No statements, no counters, no legal motions. His lawyers, once defiant, began pulling back. Several former brand partners with Combs Enterprises announced they were reevaluating relationships. The man once hailed as a black cultural titan, a hip-hop mogul, was now being referred to with a colder phrase, the man he used to be. A farewell to the culture of silence. This saga didn't end with a prison sentence. It didn't conclude with a shocking video. It ended with a shift in awareness, a dismantling of a structure built on no one speaks, no one knows, no one dares believe. And what was strange, almost poetic, the person who started it wasn't a survivor or an activist or a journalist. It was an actor, an on-screen hero, a man famous for being the good guy, who once was invited into a bathtub and simply said no. The final question. At the end of the 60 Minutes interview, Anderson Cooper asked, "Do you think you've done enough?" Keanu smiled, sipped his tea, and said, "I don't know, but I think if someone like me was still afraid, how many people out there don't even dare breathe?" He closed with a quiet sentence, not a declaration, but a signal. Water doesn't remember the face of the one who used it, but the one who steps into it remembers. Forever.